have over 100 people now. The participant number is going up. I think we'll start and let people log on now. Thank you all for coming to the second session of this AppStudio workshop. We had great feedback on the first session. I think everyone, most things were positive. It was great. Hopefully we'll have a great workshop here today as we get going. A few things. If you're logging in for the first time, please make sure that you go to this URL. If you haven't joined the workshop previously, maybe you watched the videos, but make sure you go to that URL. We are going to use that location to download some of the exercises and some of the things needed for this workshop. I'm actually going to take 1 second and turn off a fan that's in my room. I don't want you to hear the fan noise. Hold on. Okay, the loud fan is turned off. A few more things today. Last time we didn't have the chat enabled. It was, you had to enable at the organizational level in Zoom or whatever. So it is now enabled. So we do have chat enabled. You can ask some questions there. Please, I would say, go easy on us. We have a lot of people logged in. If we get too many questions going, I know some of our other helpers won't be able to answer all of them, and I definitely won't be able to pay attention to all of them. But do use it. Also, we in GeoNet and Esri's community engagement website, GeoNet. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great place to get information, to ask questions of teams, of products. On the AppStudio group on GeoNet, we've created a discussion thread for this workshop. If you go there and ask questions, particularly, maybe deeper technical questions, it's going to take one of our product engineers or developers to answer. It's a great place. We had 4 people answer questions yesterday, at least last time I looked, and the product engineers reviewed those, and I reviewed those, and we were able to post some answers there. So if you have a specific question or you run into a problem, particularly in between these sessions, as we're kind of spacing them out a little bit, if you run into something in between the sessions, we are monitoring that GeoNet site and that discussion, and we will do our best to answer those questions and get those answers to you. So I think that will be a good resource for kind of in between sessions and getting things going. All right. Again, if you didn't know, this is the AppStudio workshop. We're excited today. We have a little bit different lineup. The presenters today were myself, a product manager for AppStudio. Tina Jin will also be presenting again, as well as Erwin Soikianto, product engineer. And Brooke Reams will be presenting next week. So she will not be presenting today, but you'll hear a lot from Brooke, and she'll give you some great information on programming with AppStudio next week. So we've gone through day one. As a little bit of a recap, we did an introduction of AppStudio. We talked a lot about desktop, gave you a tour of desktop, gave you a tour of AppStudio Player, talked about some of the benefits there. We also had an exercise where we configured an app. So we used our maps, our data sources. We used some icons and things, and we configured an app without writing any code, particularly. So that was most of day one. I think we covered probably a few more topics than that, but that was the overview of day one. So day two, we're going to jump right into a licensing overview. So we had a few licensing questions. This is an important topic. It's not, I will say, it's not a super fun topic. It's not something I love to present on, but it is necessary, and we need to talk about licensing and help you understand how AppStudio is licensed, how you're going to maybe license your apps, how you're going to get those deployed, what licenses you need to be successful in building and pushing out apps. So we will get into a licensing overview. Then we're going to kind of change gears, I would say, a little bit. I'm going to go do a tips and tricks app design discussion, where we're just going to give a few ideas if you're designing apps before you get started, what things to think about. It'll be a little bit different, I think, than some of our presentations, but I think some valuable information and a little change from other things we're talking about today. We'll then go into a longer discussion on distributing apps. And AppStudio has some really unique ways of distributing apps. And so I'll go into actually quite a bit of detail and some exercises and some demos even on different ways of distributing apps. After that, Erwin will talk a bit about the AppStudio architecture, and he'll talk about customizing code. So we'll introduce you to a little bit of code, introduce you to Acute Creator, and the idea of how you can take an app and customize maybe one of the templates with some extra functionality. So, and then we'll kind of finish it off with an exercise where you'll actually get to type a little bit of code. The primary I say coding lessons and introduction to the structure and things. A lot of that is going to happen on next Tuesday, but we're going to introduce you. I know many of you are excited about that, and it's always satisfying to, especially for someone who maybe like myself I'm not a full-time developer by any means. I can write a little bit of code, I can get things working, and it's very satisfying to write some code and to get to actually see it work on your application. That's right. So next week we will talk about on day 3, which will be next Tuesday. We'll go into testing and debugging your apps, more on the core concepts of writing code for AppStudio apps. This is writing QML code and building layouts and using JavaScript in your apps and things. Day 4, a little more about code. We'll talk a lot about putting a map and using the ArcGIS Runtime and the capabilities you can bring with ArcGIS Runtime into your app. And then also some of the really cool benefits of using the AppStudio framework in your app and some of the tools and components that we provide to allow you to accomplish things in your app with the AppStudio framework. And then we'll wrap up. All right. So with that, I will jump right into an AppStudio for ArcGIS. This is the licensing overview. We'll talk about licensing, what licensing you need for AppStudio, what licensing you need for the ArcGIS Runtime SDK. So the mapping components that are within AppStudio, because they are licensed slightly different. And then the licensing you might need when publishing your apps. Particularly, we're talking about to the app stores. What other licenses you may need. So first, I want to talk about user types. So actually, this should have been titled user types. So if you are not familiar with user types, it's something you kind of need to know when thinking about AppStudio and what you can do in AppStudio and what others can do with these tools. So at Esri, we have, when you're part of an ArcGIS organization, we used to just have 2 different users. There was a viewer user, we called that a level 1, and there was a level 2, and that level 2 could create all sorts of things in the ArcGIS organization. We're talking about ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. And a level 2 user could create maps and share them with people and edit data and do all these things. A level 1 user could just view maps. That was it. View data, view maps. That was it. So a little over a year ago, we introduced this idea of user types, and there are a number of different user types that you can have in an organization. So when you have an ArcGIS account, you will be one of these user types, and they have different functionality. So we have a viewer, an editor, a field worker, a creator, and a GIS professional. There's a couple of newer specialty user types for an insights analyst and a storyteller. We're not going to cover those. Those aren't as applicable really for AppStudio here, but these are the primary user types that you can be in an ArcGIS organization. So a viewer can, as you can probably guess, can view things. They can view maps and data. They can access that through different apps that they have access to. There's different type of, whether that's mobile apps, whether that's web apps, they can log in and view information. And this is different than, I guess, almost another type of user would be a public user. And that's not a public account, but someone who's viewing your maps and data that's not logging in at all, right? You can share things publicly and anyone can view them, but you can share things privately and still have a viewer user type view those items. So if you want you have some secure maps for your organization, you want people, you require them to log in to be able to view those maps, well, they can have a viewer user type. And of course, a viewer is less expensive. You can have more and more people in your organization have these viewer user types. Then we have an editor. An editor can do everything a viewer can, except one little bit, they can actually edit data in a feature service or a feature layer. So they can update and edit data. So if you have a specific tool which allows people to edit data, and maybe you just need some editor user types for those people. They're not going to be creating new maps, they're just going to be editing data. We have a field worker. It's kind of like an editor, but they also have access to a number of field apps that we have: mobile apps, collector, workforce, and survey 123. So this field worker is really, they're probably not creating maps. They're not creating new data and data sets and doing analysis. They're working in the field and they're doing that using these field apps. So it includes this field apps bundle. Then we have a creator. A creator, we used to call this a level 2. Creator is, they have everything that, of course, the field worker and editor has, but they can really, this is what probably, I think most of you probably are a creator, maybe just professional user type, but a creator. You can create things in your organization. You can create maps and data. You can create story maps. You can create web app builder applications. You can create operations dashboards. You can create things and share those with others. A JS professional is a creator with a license of ArcGIS Pro added on. And there's actually a few different levels of ArcGIS Pro: Basic, Standard, Advanced, but you are essentially a JS professional. Everything a creator does, but plus that ArcGIS Pro license. So those are user types. Now, how does that play into AppStudio? How does that play into licensing of AppStudio? Well, with these different user types, what can you do with AppStudio? So with all these different user types, you can download and run apps inside of AppStudio Player. So we talked a bit about AppStudio Player. I think we demoed it and many of you installed it and used it. This is an application you get from the App Store, which allows you to run your apps on mobile devices and also on desktop, because it runs on desktops as well. So if you want someone to log in and run an app that you've created, download and run an app in AppStudio Player, they just need to be a user type. They can be a viewer, editor, field worker, doesn't matter. So all of these user types have access to install AppStudio Player, download apps, and run them. And then we have the AppStudio for ArcGIS license, and you can think of this really as those desktop tools and things we use. So that, to use those, you do need to be a creator or JS professional user type. So you get the desktop tools. You can configure apps like we did in day one. You can change the settings, add new icons, connect them to your data that you've created. You can actually also develop apps with code. That's apps from scratch, or maybe adding new functionality onto those existing templates that you've worked with. So you can get into the code, the samples and all that good stuff using just with the creator or JS professional user type. And then to share those apps with others, you're going to share them using AppStudio Player. You share them into your organization and other people have access. We'll go into more detail on that later, and some examples of that. We also have an AppStudio Developer Edition license. The AppStudio Developer Edition license is not really a user type, but it's a special user type that you get kind of when you get a paid ArcGIS developer subscription. So at Esri, we have these. We have a developer a website, and there's a developer subscription that you can subscribe to. These are tools that you get access to primarily for developing apps. If you're interested about that, go to developers.arcgis.com. You learn about that. You can learn more about developer subscriptions, what they offer. There's a number of developer subscriptions out there. I say paid ArcGIS developer subscription because there is a free Essentials developer subscription. The AppStudio Developer Edition license does not come with that free version. You do have to have a paid ArcGIS developer subscription of any of the paid versions. So it's Builder and above. And with this, you get the access to CloudMake. You get the ability to create a separate install, application binary and put that on devices. So you're running your app outside of AppStudio Player. You're publishing it to the app stores. You're putting it into your organization. So if you do need to publish apps to app stores, that is a requirement that you would have that developer edition license. You also get access to some of our advanced templates. So Survey 123, Quick Capture, and a couple others. You get access to those more advanced templates. That does require that paid ArcGIS developer subscription. I will say this, that many organizations have developer subscriptions and maybe aren't using them, or they're not being used as they should be. So years ago, we had something called EDN, the Esri Developer Network. And it was very successful. People, a lot of organizations bought this. You get access to all these Esri tools for development needs. Well, a few years ago, we transferred over to this developer subscriptions, and all those EDN licenses became developer subscription licenses. So what I'm saying is that your organization may have developer subscription licenses and they don't know it. They got transferred over. So especially if you're part of a large organization, contact administrator and say, hey, do you have any developer subscriptions that we aren't using or that are available? Because you might have them in-house and you have this developer edition license as it is. But if not, you can sign up for one of these developer subscriptions to get that developer edition license of AppStudio. All right. Hopefully that clears it up and gives you an idea of what's possible at these different user types and developer subscription. Let's talk a little bit about the ArcGIS Runtime SDK. So this is the libraries and tools that bring spatial capabilities to our native apps. They bring the ability to view maps, to do data editing, to work offline. You can do things like routing and analysis using the Runtime SDK. The Runtime SDK is available for all sorts of different platforms. For .NET development, for iOS and Android and Java development. We, with AppStudio, we use the Acute version of the Runtime SDK, and it's embedded inside of AppStudio. And with that, there comes, depending on what kind of functionality you put into your app, there's some extra licensing that you may need. So there's the different licensing levels of runtime. There's Light. This will allow you to view maps and data, display data on in your device. You can do some simple place finding and routing directions and basic editing of public data. So if you are creating a public app, most likely you just need this Light version of the runtime. It will cover most of your needs for viewing and place finding and even basic editing. So if you have an app that does maybe some crowdsource data where people are going to be, they're not logging in to edit data, they're just you're just crowdsourcing or doing some citizen science data collection, you can do some basic editing of public data at that Light level. Basic does everything Light does. It also allows you to do editing. The big thing here is editing of private data. So if someone is actually going to log in, your data layer is secured, and they're going to log in with a username and password. To edit the data, they need that basic version of the runtime. The few other things that come in there is you can also do some map authoring and navigation at that basic level. The standard level allows you to do everything basic, but the big thing here is being able to access local data files. So these are if you have specific imagery formats that you're storing locally, you can access those with a standard, if you have a standard license. You can actually edit what we call a local file geodatabase with that standard level license as well. And then advanced, I won't really go much into advanced because AppStudio doesn't work with, we don't work with the advanced license. It really is about editing enterprise geodatabases and doing some analysis that requires this other piece of technology called local server, which doesn't run on Qt. It's more of a .NET thing. So I won't really go into advanced because it doesn't apply to AppStudio, but there is something, you might run across something called the advanced license of runtime. All right, so how do we deploy these different licenses? So you put this function, you want this functionality in your app. How do you make it, I guess, come alive or be licensed? Well, if you have that light version, remember I talked about, this is like most likely if you're putting it into an app store, and all of our templates, they use the light version of the runtime. It just gets deployed free as a license key that gets embedded inside of your app. That is, we have a tool inside of AppStudio Desktop, which you literally just click a button to register your app, and it's now got a runtime license. They could also sign in with a viewer account. So if you had an app where someone was signing into your app and they had a viewer account, that would also kind of enable that light version of runtime. Basic. Remember, basic. What we add at the runtime version, basic version, is we add the ability to edit private data. So to enable basic, you can either get, we can call them deployment keys, or a license key from us that you actually pay us and say, hey, I'm gonna create an app that we're editing some private data, and we're gonna deploy it to 20 people or so, and you can buy those license keys from Esri customer service. Most likely what you're gonna do is those people are gonna have ArcGIS user accounts, and they're gonna log in. So there's two ways to unlock this basic runtime license. They're going to log in with an editor, a field worker, or I didn't include it here, but also the creator and JS professional licenses as well. So if you need to build a custom app that does something like collector, that does something like survey 123, where people are going to log in, access those services, and to do that, you're going to need this, basic version of runtime. Well, they simply just log in with their editor or field worker or creator user type to unlock that and get that functionality. Standard, this is the ability to read those local files, maybe specialty imagery formats like TIFF or Mr. SID or things like that, and be able to read that directly in your app, and to edit those a local file geodatabase. That you can unlock that with a creator or GIS professional user type. Of course, you can also get a paid license key from Esri to do that as well. So two ways to unlock standard, just like basic, just it takes a higher level of a user type to do so. And then advanced, again, we're not really talking about this because it doesn't apply to our needs here, but that gets unlocked with a GIS Pro Standard or GIS Pro Advanced user type. So if you are in the .NET world, or I think the Java world as well, building apps that have advanced runtime, those are how you would unlock that functionality. All right, I know so a lot of information, and we haven't gotten too deep, but we've had some questions about the licensing and want to talk about this. And there's a few more extensions that can be purchased separately on these runtime extensions for analysis, Street Map Premium, the utility network. There is some capabilities that for ArcGIS Runtime that you can purchase separate extensions for. We're going to shift gears now. Let's say you do want to publish your app to the App Store. Okay, what are you going to need? You're going to need, what I talked about, you're going to need a Developer Edition license. So you're going to need that ArcGIS Developer subscription. So you get that Developer Edition license of AppStudio and do a cloud build of your app. And then you're going to, you're going to have a version of Runtime that's going to be licensed in there, most likely Basic, but perhaps you're using, most likely Light, but perhaps using Basic, a version of Runtime. And then you're going to need to have a developer account with these different platforms. I'm just going to cover here, and I'm going to go into some detail a little bit later, a lot more detail later on how some of the steps when you do this publishing to the different app stores. But let you know that for an Apple Developer Program license, it's like $99 a year that's kind of for an individual, or $299 for a enterprise or a group, and you can have multiple users on that, and there's a bit more functionality that you get with the $300 a year. But you do have to pay per year for that Apple developer license or developer subscription. A Google developer account, that's a $25 one-time fee. These are, and grant, I should have mentioned, these are United States prices. I don't know the exact price. I think, they're similar around the world. But so just beware, if you want to publish an app to the App Store, if this is going to be a hurdle in your organization, one of these licenses, you do need one of these to be able to sign and deploy. And with Apple, to even do a build of your app, you have to have the correct license. It won't even let you do a build unless you have a license for that. And then last, I want to talk a little bit about the Acute commercial license. So we use technology from Acute, and you can build apps and deploy apps, and we take kind of care of everything. But there are a few certain scenarios, if you're building specific kinds of apps, that you're going to need to have a separate license from the Acute company, and you'll have to purchase that from them and deal with them. We call this Acute commercial license. One is if you are going to charge money for your app, meaning you're going to put your app in the App Store and people are going to pay money to get that app. It costs money to get your app. Then you'll need that Acute license, the Acute commercial license. Or if you were going to, even if it's not an App Store, but you have an app and you have it on your website, maybe it's a Windows application or Mac, and people have to pay you to get access to that app, then yes, you will have to have a Acute commercial license, and you'll have to sign up for that. If you're going to have advertisements in your app, and those are going to make money for you, then you have to have the Acute commercial license. And if you are going to be doing some things that are going to require the full developer tool set, we include Acute Creator application in AppStudio, but if you want the full developer Acute tool set and the ability to do a local build your applications locally, it does require that Acute commercial license. But again, these are most Esri customers, most use cases, they're building public apps for public information. They're building apps for internal use, for tools for people accomplishing tasks in their organization. Those scenarios do not require you to have a Acute commercial license. We have some licensing deal with apps with the Acute company that covers that part of it. But if you do want to do a local make, you're not going to use our cloud make service. You're going to do a build of your app locally and set up your own build machines. That does also require that full developer tool set and the Acute commercial license.